is filled with burden and angst for this country and for our nation and for the state of the church in America. And I want to just encourage you with a few thoughts, and in order to do that, I wanted us to turn very quickly so that I don't preach two sermons to 1 John chapter 2. 1 John, beginning in chapter 2, this is the word that I want to remind us of as we think about this going forward in terms of what has transpired in our culture, in our generation. The Apostle John, says in 1 John chapter 2 and verse 15, he says, "Do not love the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. The world is passing away, and also its lusts. But the one who does the will of God lives forever." I don't think there could be a more pertinent passage for us to be reminded of. In terms of our eschatology, and here I am not thinking of the timing of the rapture. Here I am not thinking of the nature of the millennium. Here I am not thinking about the second coming. But in terms of biblical eschatology, what the Apostle John is telling us is that the age to come has already inaugurated in this present evil age what he calls the passing away of the world. That is to say, that through Jesus and through his ministry, through his life, his death, his burial, and his resurrection to the right hand of God the Father, the result of that is that the age to come has already penetrated into this time, into this age, into our lives, into this world, so that what we're seeing now is the fading away of the old world. It's very important for us to understand what John is saying here when he says, "Do not love the world." Well, in one sense, we can say we love the world. I love this world in the sense that I look up at the sky and I look at the beautiful sun. I'm driving here to church today and I look across nice, beautiful blue sky, puffy white clouds, and I see the fields, and I think this is a beautiful world. But that is not at all what the Apostle John has in mind. When he says cosmos in this context, what he means is, we were talking about this in Sunday school, what he's talking about is the present evil age, the present order of things, the present system of morality, philosophy, spirituality, the present system of fallen man, and all that it comprises. What he is saying is, do not love that world. Because that world, the form of this world, is passing away. The order, the system, the governments, the values, the morality, the humanistic age in which we live, brothers and sisters, is falling away, and taking it with that fall, as it's fading away, going with it is all of its lusts, all of its evil epithumia, impulses to do evil. All of that is fading away, and therefore, he says, the boastful pride of life. That is exactly what we saw this week going forward in this country. The boastful pride of life. This is exactly what the Tower of Babel was all about. The boastful pride of life. Man making a name for himself in this post-Genesis 3 world, and thinking that they will prosper and sin with impunity. And that is precisely what the Bible rejects. I think now that what has transpired in our nation, in our country, I think now more than ever, Christians are going to be brought up sharp on the reality that, as Martin Lloyd-Jones said, that the Christian worldview is in direct antithesis to any other worldview. That our worldview is in direct opposition to the evil system of this world. They cannot coexist. They cannot coincide. They are not the same. We cannot live in harmony with the direction and the course of this age. This is why Jesus said that tribulation and trouble is promised for you. This is why Paul says, if you seek to be godly, you will suffer persecution. The antithesis is there not so much by man's doing, but by God's doing. You remember in Romans chapter 8, the Apostle Paul says, God subjected the world to futility. Why? In hope. In hope of what? The redemption of the sons of God. In other words, why is this hostility there? Why does this antithesis exist? Because God is redeeming a people for himself. And he is bringing that redemption about by the rising and falling of kingdoms and nations and powers. And all the while, God is creating for himself a new humanity in Christ Jesus, a spiritual kingdom, a new race, a new nation, a new people, the family of God. And so now, the onus is on us, Christians, to think deeper, to be more sober, to be more faithful than ever before, to be more convicted about the truth, to be more settled in our heart about our confession of faith. Everything that the book of Hebrews is telling us to do. To not move, to hold fast, to not waver, to not doubt. Nothing else is going to sustain us in the evil day. Nothing. And that's why we come to the book of Hebrews with great anticipation, because we know that what Hebrews is teaching us is for our endurance. That's what the whole letter of Hebrews is designed to produce. Greater perseverance in the midst of evil, in the midst of suffering. As it says in Hebrews chapter 2, if the captain of our salvation, if he was perfected through suffering, well, how much more will the children that God is going to bring to glory, how much more will he not perfect us in suffering? The same thing. Remember what Jesus said, the servant is not greater than his master. If they hated him, they will hate us. And Jesus says, remember that I told you ahead of time, so that when it happens, you will not forget that I told you. Right? When the world, like the men of Sodom, are blindly chasing after, in the greediest fashion imaginable, unthinkable immorality. And they cannot comprehend why you do not only understand, but agree and celebrate the pursuit of evil. In one sense, I'm very excited about where we are as a country, because now through the crucible of persecution, the church is going to be manifested as to the legitimacy of people's faith or the inauthenticity of your faith. I tell you what, if you're coming to Heritage Grace and you're just here and you're just among us and you really truly are not doing business with God, now is the time. You can't fake the funk anymore. You need to settle it in your heart. Are you in or are you out? Jesus said, you are either for me or you are against me. There is no neutral ground. If you deny me in the presence of people, I will deny you in the presence of my Father and the holy angels. We are in the valley of decision. It is time to make your conviction clear. And so in that sense, I am excited that persecution in America, because it is coming, and it's already here, folks. It's already here. Just ask the Christian baker that had their business closed down and that is being fined thousands of dollars. You'll feel the weight of persecution if you had that business, and if your livelihood, and if the food on the table of your children is being threatened, you will feel yourself persecuted. And so persecution is going to produce precisely what persecution has always produced in the history of the church, and that is purity. Purity. And so I'm looking forward to that. But today, I'm going to continue to do what I believe that God has called us to do, even in the midst of tumultuous times such as these, which is to preach the word. Right? Paul didn't tell the Apostle Timothy, or Apostle Paul didn't tell Timothy, when persecution comes, panic. When persecution comes, stop everything and think of something new to do. Now, when times get hard, more than ever, Timothy, be committed to preach the word in season and out of season. That means when it is convenient and when it is no longer a convenient, popular, hip, cool, trendy thing to do to be Christian. Preach the word in season and out.